Where were you all summer?
Yeah. What are you, my mother?
I was just asking.
I was working, which is more than any of you skids can say.
Working?
That's right. I was lugging boxes at Bargain City, moron.
Nice job.
Eat me. Saving up to get me some wheels.
Yeah? You want to hear what I did?
No.
Would love to have a taxi reunion. I know you were a big Jeff Conaway guy, and so one of the friends of the show. So,
well, I miss Jeff Conaway. I saw Jeff Conaway in a very different light than I think the world saw him, because at the time when he was just before he died, there he is calling from the grave.
he wanted to stop you before you said the wrong thing, but
he would call all the time, by the way. And oddly enough, when you mentioned him, the phone would ring and he would usually be the guy. It was this strange touch of omnipotence. But the thing about Conaway that I loved is that the world didn't really see him as him. When he needed a paycheck and turned to things like Celebrity Fit Club or Celebrity Rehab, that came at a price that kind of put in the mind of the people at home who he was. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't really who he was. Does that make sense?
It does. As opposed to Nick Cage, who got away with like openly taking whatever's presented to him, and and it just adds to the legend. Yeah.
Although I will hold Renfield against Nick Cage, because a Universal product, I think, not to insult our home base, but that had all the potential in the world. And they even do a throwback to like the 1931 Dracula, and they still can't seem to deliver a movie. Anyway, I always tell this one, I used to spend Halloweens with Jeff Conaway, and he would wear his T-Birds jacket from Greece and put on a werewolf mask and scare the kids, which I loved. And we'd hang out and he'd order pizza, and we'd argue with our wives over which scary movies we'd watch. Would we watch Dracula or Bride of Frankenstein, or they wanted to watch like Amityville Horror or something more common? So there'd always be this Halloween movie argument at the end of the night. But the story I love to tell about him briefly, since we're talking about him, is the one that I don't think a lot of people know. My cousin was having like her 16th birthday or something at Islands, right?
No, nice.
In Studio City, and she goes, and I told her I'd stop by, and I'm meeting Jeff Conaway for coffee prior to that. And so I cut it short. I'm like, Jeff, I got to go. My cousin's having her birthday right up the street. And he's like, well, I'll go with you. I got nothing to do. And I'm like, all right. He's like, here, I'll drive. So we get into his Porsche and we're driving, and he was a reckless driver. So he's on like he's just swerving in between lanes into oncoming traffic, the sidewalk, whatever gets us there. And we pull up to Islands and we walk in. And of course, a pack of 16-year-old girls go nuts. It's Kaniki from Greece. And they're like screaming, like he walked into a concert. They're going absolutely nuts. He went right into character, and he immediately starts doing like the Kaniki shuffle, and hey, Hickey from Kaniki's like a Hallmark card, and he does the whole role, and basically spent hours just answering every question and posing for every photograph, and that's actually who he was. He was kind of like your real fun-loving friend who sometimes could be a little bit too much for you to handle, depending on what you were dealing with, but you loved him, and he was kind of like your eccentric buddy. And it was sad to see him go out as such a target for so much, like as being like considered a joke, because he did have exceptional talent, and he was up for Indiana Jones.
Yeah, and of course he was the original Danny Zuko in the stage, or he was in the stage version.
He was, and he always said that John Travolta stole his act.
So, and his career and
his career, but he had to take the road through Welcome Back, Kotter. So Travolta also paid his dues.
True,
not that that's
true.
Not that being on Welcome Back, Kotter is like being in a criminal labor camp, but come on,
you and your sweat hogs.
He sweat hogs. Oh, the legend. Anyway,
your road to redemption is paved with tombstones. No quarter, kill all masters. Go to noquarterkillallmasters.com. Rated R.